Okay, I think we can start. GM everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As a reminder, this meeting is for the DAO, so it's not for BF or any certain individual. The format here is open, so at any point or any time, just unmute yourself and join the conversation. As we usually do, we start with Beansprout, and I think today Manifold may have some news to share with us that they hinted on likely on Twitter. How's it going, Manifold?
Hey, Mod. Doing well. Yeah, as I'm sure everyone can kind of recognize, we're making a push to have root markets live for the World Cup, and so it's been a pretty massive team effort. A lot of DAO members that have been contributing to this effort, as well as root team members and some partners. What I wanted to share today is really a concept that we have at Root that we wanted to share with the DAO. And I'll jump right into it because this is going to have potentially infinite follow-up questions and comments. And there's a lot of places to take this discussion. So rather than wait, I think we should just jump right into it. So Root is considering proposing to the DAO an application for a loan, in which the DAO, the Beanstalk DAO, mints right now it's called 1 million beans via a BIP. The beans are effectively, the lent beans would effectively be controlled by a multi-sig that Root controls. And the purpose of these loan proceeds would be to provide delta neutral liquidity via Root into these 2022 World Cup pools that we'll be offering, hopefully, in time. Now, the way that we view the economics is that this can be advantageous to the DAO because on the seniorage that's earned in the interim of the loan on these million beans, let's call it, we can return 100% of that seniorage to the Beanstalk DAO. So, earned beans that are generated on the principal loan during the term. So there's zero dilution to stockholders. Nextly, and there's a real innovation here that I think can't be understated. And, I'm curious on all the economic minds in the DAO and their thoughts on this. This potentially opens up a path for Beanstalk to lend capital with an incredibly low cost of capital, potentially 0% interest rates, if it's positive sum for the DAO to do so. And so, what we are kind of thinking right now is, a revenue share from Root market making in these World Cup pools that gets distributed to the Beanstalk DAO after the event settlement. So, just the first 2 points to sum up, 100% of the seniorage gets distributed to silo depositors, stockholders, and then there's a revenue share on the market making revenues that the Root multi-sig generates that gets distributed to the DAO. Upon completion of the term, the Beanstalk DAO would burn the principal loan, the million beans, upon delivery of funds. And so just to recap one more time, the Beanstalk DAO and silo members would be distributed 100% of the earned beans on the principal, percentage of the Root market making revenues, and to stockholders as well. There's obviously, infinite risks in this. Some of the key ones that I'll highlight that are going to be obvious to a lot of folks are smart contract, multi-sig, false oracle, loss of funds, errors in execution, unprofitable strategies, etc. Just wanted to preliminary get this out in front of the DAO on this call. Again, there's probably going to be a channel that we need to open up probably today where we can put some of this, on paper and share it. But this, would be a very positive sum endeavor, I think, potentially because, it doesn't cost the DAO anything. And now there is a liquid market for the World Cup that Root can market make, hopefully profitably, that attracts not just existing farmers and deposits and whatnot, but new capital because it's the cheapest place to place these bets on chain across any chain if you're interested in betting on the World Cup. So I'll pause there. I know there's a lot. Maud, I'll defer to you on the structure of this call, but that's kind of the main thing I wanted to share right now.
Okay, thank you, Manifold. I've muted a few other folks, so you can just message on the Barnyard chat and we can unmute you, and to others, again, you can unmute yourself and join the conversation at any point. Maybe I'll summarize a little bit of what you said, Manifold, and then we can open the floor for questions. So the idea here is that Root wants to facilitate or market make, let's say, for the World Cup. And to do so, Root requires capital. So Root proposes to submit a loan application to the Beanstalk DAO, and then the Beanstalk DAO can mint beans and give that loan to Root to market make. Any seigniorage that it's made from that loan will be 100% paid back to the DAO. So this means that there is no dilution to stockholders during the duration of that loan. And then any revenue that Root makes from that loan is going to be split. It's going to be some profit share agreement with the DAO, and Root is going to share it basically with the Beanstalk DAO. This is a timed loan, so there is some duration on when the DAO can expect the loan to be returned. And then lastly, as you said, there are some risks for that loan, and maybe you can share more about what those risks are now, Manifold. Is the summary correct?
Totally correct. And I would just say at a high level, I think this setup works if the borrowing entity is really an aligned entity with Beanstalk, meaning, this loan isn't meant to be dumped. It's not sell pressure. The intention of this loan is to facilitate further liquidity within the Beanstalk ecosystem and utility.
Okay, that's clear. I see we have a few messages in the Barnyard, so let's see. Okay, Albin says, or comments maybe, and he says that at first sight, the risks seem to far outweigh the benefits. However, it may be worth doing some just from the point of view of bootstrapping the first Bean utility partner. Exala says, seeing a big challenge about communicating Root's offering on this, so curious about Root's plan for communications and launch. Maybe we can discuss this a bit. And I see Harry Smith says, what's the actual amount of the loan? Okay. Manifold, do you want to take this one by one?
Yes. So let me just get to the Barnyard chat. Okay. Lord of Barty, what's the bet in size? That's great. Okay. Albine, risks seem to outweigh the benefits. So that's potentially true. And I think that that's something that each farmer will have to kind of decide for themselves. I do think that there are, lots of risks that are totally orthogonal to one another. And, it's important to recognize that. From a benefits perspective, I do think that this is a specific use case where Beanstalk can really, offer its credit almost as a product. And I do think that there are certain unlocks here, whether that or not this specific proposal makes sense or this specific use case makes sense for farmers to think about. And that's the ability for Beanstalk to offer loans at a very little to no cost of capital if it's advantageous for the ecosystem. So, it's kind of difficult to say if the benefits outweigh the risks or the risks outweigh the benefits, because that's ultimately an individual decision. I think, from my perspective, I just want to make sure that I clearly translate, what the concept is, and then everyone can kind of decide for themselves. But you're totally right. There's a lot of risks, so don't want to understate that. Egg salad. Maud, do you want me to just go down here, or do you want to? What's the best way to do this?
I wanted to maybe comment a little bit, and since we're talking about the risks, maybe we can expand a bit on it, Manifold. And this is an open conversation here as well.
Sure. So
I'm thinking that there are two, let's say, kind of risks that we are looking at, and tell me if there's another or other type. Let's say one is the economical risk, and the other is, let's say, the smart contract risk. The smart contract risk is a risk that's there everywhere. So maybe something wasn't audited, or whatever risks that come with the code or the protocol itself. The economical risk is what we're looking at right now here is that Root is making a market. So the question becomes: does such a market need to exist, and is there a need for a market of that sorts? And then how far, let's say, that economical risk is. My understanding is Root initially is maybe asking for 1 million beans. So then the maximum risk that we're looking at is that 1 million beans. So we're having a cap on, let's say, that risk, and that goes both ways. So even if there is a contract risk, the maximum risk is also capped at 1 million beans. Is that correct, Manifold? Do you agree?
Yeah, I think those are both accurate. I think what I would add to that is, there's, a few other key risks, and this is not, every risk, but, there's risk on multi-sig or, social engineering. There's risk on just errors in execution on the trading strategy. There's risks on, sum to all loss of funds, either from an unprofitable strategy. So, there's certainly a handful of risks. Now, I think when and if Root proposes this formally, I think there's going to have to be another discussion probably that's more in depth. I think this one can stay a little bit more high level, but those are some of the things I think for farmers to think about.
Okay. Then Excited asks about the communication. I understand that Root intends to submit some sort of a proposal, and then maybe we'll open a channel for it today.
Is that a question? Or
yeah, I was asking, can we expect that? So is Root expected to submit something maybe today or the next few days?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. I mean, the other big piece here is that there is some time sensitivity. If this is going to happen, there's a lot of moving parts that need to come into play, and frankly, we don't have much time. I think the DAO and the Root team and kind of everyone involved is working as fast as they can in a safe manner with Halborn auditing the contract. So definitely probably need to get this out today, and hopefully that helps, Egg Salad. But respect your perspective. So. Please, any feedback's obviously welcome.
Okay. Harry Smith says that 1 million beans are probably not enough. I think I hear someone. Let me just make sure. Okay.
So the example, I love Harry's comments. The example that I gave, it was just an example, but you're right. If Lord Abarty is looking to come in with 100K on Italy, that's going to cause too much slippage if Root's providing the majority of the liquidity, so we might need to up the loan. Totally right.
Okay, I think the Albin had some comment where he said that he thinks that this is a real product, and agreed, this is a real market. So he says that maybe there should be some railguards put into that, and I think we will get more details as Root submits that proposal. Cujo asks, would there be any collateral provided to the DAO for the event of that the amount gets defaulted on?
So there certainly can be a world. I mean, I just think speaking candidly, Root is, to my knowledge, the largest entity or wallet when it comes to bean exposure. So just from a first principles incentive perspective, it's just food for thought for farmers to keep in mind. Now, if there's some collateral, that wants to be had, I think it's important to recognize that is, from the DAO's perspective, a great thing. Collateral against loans, if you're an issuer, is obviously, a good thing. However, this is also a stretch from Root's perspective. This is a pretty outside the box idea. So there's probably going to be, just candidly speaking, certain circumstances where it doesn't make sense to do this loan with the DAO. And just want to, speak candidly about that. So, obviously things are flexible and this is kind of in an ideation phase right now, but just something to keep in mind.
Okay. Bacchus says, I thought Root was going to inject liquidity into the system, not take out, a loan. Maybe Manifold, you can touch on that a bit as well. But the purpose of Root is, go for it, Manifold.
Sure, I can touch on it. So it's a great point, Bacchus. I mean, the first thing I would add is most of the liquidity in the system is from Root. So, I think that that's pretty objectively clear that it's injecting liquidity into the system. But the purpose of this loan is not taking out a large unsecured loan to drain liquidity. I think you're looking at it almost backwards. The purpose of this loan is to create the most liquid betting market for this event, such that it facilitates other outside capital and liquidity to come in and place sides bets without having to incur significant slippage, which, the end goal being to inject liquidity in the system. I think I would go back to my first point in that, for a loan like this to make sense, at a high level, the borrower needs to be aligned with Beanstalk, and this cannot create sell pressure on Beans. So I think it's important to recognize that while this is a large loan, it's not intended to be sold in any capacity. It's intended to provide liquidity in a market.
Yeah. And one more thing is maybe to add is that Root is a generalized marketplace, and its intention is to facilitate a market in the bean economy, or in a market that utilizes and uses beans. All right, Jans.
So a couple questions. The intention is to make markets in these Root markets that are going to be denominated in beans or in roots.
The intention is to make these markets in roots such that, there is no opportunity cost for bettors for exiting the silo to make a bet.
And so the basic premise is that the beans that are borrowed by Root are going to immediately be used to mint Root tokens, which are then going to be used to provide liquidity in what is, I'm not sure exactly how that would work, a delta neutral strategy into this World Cup betting market. And so as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, let's just assume, and obviously as you highlighted, Mr. Manifold, a lot of things could go wrong from a risk perspective, but at least from an economics perspective, assuming that there's no contract problems or execution issues, if nobody bets, meaning Root makes these markets and nobody bets, then at the end of the World Cup, Root would just return it would return the bean loan to Beanstalk with the seniorage, and there would be no cost to any parties involved. Is that right?
That's correct. I almost think of it as a call option for the DAO.
And then just to play that a little bit further, I'm just thinking out loud here, so apologies, but if for each bet, effectively, assuming that the market maker, in this case Root, is able to, again, the delta neutral part is, I think, what might need to be a little bit better defined to understand what's going on here. But assuming that Root is able to increase its expected value without decreasing its minimum return from these markets in a way that's either provable or has a high probability to be the case, then it would seem that for every bet or group of bets in the market, and again, this is happening in Roots, that would have two separate benefits to the DAO potentially. One is that everyone betting in Roots needs Roots, and so if there's demand for Roots to bet in the markets, that could translate to demand for beans, particularly if it's new money that's betting on the markets. And then separately, assuming that Root makes money as a market maker, then any of that profit would get shared with the DAO. Is that correct?
Nailed it.
So the DAO is basically creating these beans, giving these beans to the market maker. The market maker is trying their best to make the markets in such a way where those two things are true. One, that the minimum return never decreases, and two, that the expected value increases. Now, because that can't really be enforced at the contract level at this point, it seems, right? Like there's no, is this all going to be done algorithmically, or this would just be done like this is just a loan that then Root is taking kind of in good faith?
Yeah, so I think it's not going to be completely permissionless. I do hope that if this model makes sense to the DAO, I think some people in the chat highlighted this, that there can be more, there can be more specific parameters with these loans via smart contracts, and they can be permissionless. But I think this first implementation, especially given the time crunch we're under, would have to be, effectively trust in the Root multisig to go execute this strategy and return the funds as it has highlighted to the DAO.
And what would be the timeline on this loan?
So, I think that I don't know exactly when the tournament ends, but let's just call it December 31st, 2022. It seems like a reasonable date. And let's say we can issue the loan at some point next week. I know the Root token launch is going to be coming up pretty soon, so we can kind of sync timing there. But this is going to have to go through a BIP, and there's a lot to do here, and there's going to have to be a formal discussion, and that's why I'm trying to force the issue right now versus wait. But let's call it November 10th to December 31st or something like that, like just under 2 months.
Yeah, I think the World Cup is meant to end on December 18th, so end of December sounds about right.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So when is it that you think you're going to propose the BIP?
Unclear when the actual proposal is. Obviously, it needs to get proposed pretty quickly, but I think the first thing that would need to happen is just a channel, like Mod mentioned, and maybe a one pager on the outline of maybe like a term sheet almost from the DAO to Root, and then farmers can discuss and see if this makes sense to people.
I think we can also maybe schedule or have some sort of like an office hours or just another call when the BIP is out, just in case if we want to have this discussion, just given it's short time. I think you're okay with that, Manifold?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, going to go through some of the other questions, just to address them. So Jans asks, what's the alternative if there is no loan?
The alternative is, in the short term, probably just less liquidity in the market. In the long term, it's unclear, but one of our a key part of our thesis is, and a key part of the reason why Root has really chosen to leverage Beanstalk to make markets is this potential for low cost of capital, which off-chain market makers have access to. And if Beanstalk is able to offer low to zero interest loans or credit facilities to ecosystem partners or aligned partners that are helping drive organic bean demand, that's a pretty novel breakthrough, I think. So I'm not sure if that answers the question.
I think it's clear. So less liquidity, or Root will, have to seek that liquidity elsewhere, let's say.
Correct. Yeah, we'll have to feed that liquidity elsewhere. Exactly.
And I think if Beanstalk has zero opportunity cost, let's say, in minting that, then it makes it's a compelling, let's say, proposal to the DAO. Albin asks, I don't understand how there won't be sell pressure. What are the beans going to be used for? So the loan is meant to, again, market make or provide a market so people can bet. Manifold can maybe give us a bit more details on how it will be designed, but generally speaking, the way that this, when you market make or when designing that market, it's meant to be profitable. As Manifold said, there are some risks, but this is how it's intended to be used.
Correct. These beans aren't getting sold.
Breen asks, can you explain how the results of the World Cup will be obtained on chain?
Yes, this is an awesome question, Breen. So the way we're building Root is such that it is Oracle agnostic, such that as anyone can deploy a permissionless market that is on this that can really customize the Oracle solution from something that's fast and centralized to slow and decentralized. These markets, in order to facilitate fast settlement, the results are going to be effectively verified by a multi-sig. So it's not going to be Chainlink, it's not going to be UMA, it's going to be a multi-sig. And full disclosure, the details of that multi-sig are still, we're sprinting here. They still need to be kind of finalized, and that's also a key point in the discussion that's coming up. But the full Oracle architecture that we're building is not ready. This is really an MVP that we think has some serious legs, and that we can nail and really, for lack of a better word, be the main show, or for lack of a better phrase, I should say, be the main show on chain for 3 to 4 weeks if we do this right. So, the first implementation will be, graded through a multi-sig. The results will be graded through a multi-sig.
Okay, that's clear. Syncubit asks, if Root is intended to be zero fee, where will the revenue source come from?
I think it's a great question. So the way that this specific market is being designed is such that there's going to be a customizable commission. And the way that the commission works is that the commission itself is rent-free. So the way that it works is that every subsequent bettor in the pool, any subsequent volume in the pool, let's call it a 1%, let's call it a 1% commission. This specific percentage can be adjusted, but let's call it a 1% commission. That 1% commission is then distributed to token holders that have bet before that subsequent volume. So that's, what we're kind of coining as this bet to earn concept, in which the cost basis of bettors is continuously going down the more volume that the pool generates, such that it actually allows profitable market making on ETH L1, which has never been done before for on-chain betting to my knowledge. And this commission is distributed as yield to bettors. There's no rent on that commission. The 100% of that commission goes to bettors. And in this case, with this specific loan, a chunk of that commission would actually, from Root's book, would actually be flowing through to silo depositors. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you, Manifold. Xsalad asks, why is this happening so urgently? So the urgency is given that, which the World Cup is a big opportunity, and it's approaching very soon. He asks that, or says that the World Cup has been certain for 4 years. Why are we discussing this now? I think, 4 months ago, Beanstalk itself was a bit uncertain. So we're just printing, or the team is printing or going on as things develop. Then Xsalad and Tyler B both ask the same question, is that Root raised capital, so why can't they use that capital? I believe this capital was used in the barn raise, but Manifold, maybe you can shed some light.
Sure. So a significant chunk of the capital raised was used in the barn raise. Now, we do have capital partners that, we can go to for additional liquidity potentially, but that is something that, is more complicated than I make sound. So, I think in the short term right now, this potential avenue for liquidity seems like the most positive sum way to do things from my perspective, and given I guess where I sit, I've kind of evaluated a handful of options, and I think, like I saw Breen mention, like this isn't needed. Like this is an idea that and to go on the last question, that we do have a little bit of a sense of urgency. We're builders here. We're looking to push things forward. We could go slower if that's what the DAO prefers. But I think from our perspective, we're trying to push product here in a safe way and really make an impact on DeFi right now in market conditions that aren't the best. So that's just a little bit on that last point. But I think Root certainly doesn't need this liquidity. It can go elsewhere for liquidity potentially. But this is in my opinion just positive sum, for lack of a better term. I think the DAO gets pretty much a call option, additional revenue source, and this is a market that we can make incredibly liquid that attracts crypto users that could care less about Bean.
Right. Sophocles asks, why wouldn't there be sell pressure? Wouldn't the beans be sold for Root? So the way that the Root token would be... Go ahead, Manifold.
So Roots are simply just wrapped silo exposure, in short. Okay, so the silo is non-fungible. The silo deposits are non-fungible. You can't do anything with beans outside the Beanstalk protocol right now because you're forfeiting the yield, right? So the whole point of the Root token, the main point of the Root token, is to facilitate silo yields and no opportunity cost of capital outside of the Beanstalk protocol. So there's no selling. This is just beans that are wrapped silo exposure effectively and that are ERC20s.
Okay. We're at the bottom of the town hall chat, and the last question or comment is from Xsalad, and they asks that it feels that this whole offer depends on how people find out about it, how many and how is it launched. This is correct, and as Manifold said, that let's say, for example, the loan is given and then no one bets. Sorry, that might have been Publius, and then no one bets. Then the capital wasn't used or the loan wasn't put into use.
Correct. It's a if no one bets, there's no loss of funds. It's just a call option.
Okay, I see several people typing, so let's give it maybe a few minutes. Give folks some time to maybe digest a bit of what we've discussed and see if they have other questions. Jans asks, can the general populace provide funds to Root to market make?
I don't really know what general populace means. Like, cause you kind of have to be specific. Like, Root can't take money from some parties or some people, I would assume. But like, I'm just thinking about this in real time. Yeah, I mean, if there is some permissionless contract where people wanted to lend, funds to some multi-sig controlled by Root with certain terms, like, yeah, that could be facilitated. Yeah.
I think the value or the value proposition here given is that Root is able to take, let's say, a zero fee or a zero interest loan. If the general populace is willing to lend Root, capital at zero interest, that's probably compelling.
So maybe just to step in here, having digested this a little bit, from an economics perspective, there is a big difference between silo deposits being used to lend to Root and new beans being used to lend to Root. And the fundamental difference is that Beanstalk has these deposits which are forming the base liquidity of Beanstalk. And to some extent, there is an interesting notion proposed here between separating the existing silo deposits, whether they're beans or LP tokens, because even the beans are being converted into liquidity pool tokens regularly, and you don't really want to necessarily. I mean, you may want to enforce some sort of restrictions there at the protocol level, but it's definitely an interesting idea to kind of bifurcate the silo deposits, which are the liquid capital of the system, and then the zero basis loans where new beans are minted, but because there's some liability attached to the loan, the total outstanding beans sort of stays the same because Root still owes beans. So now there's more beans outstanding, but there's an obligation back to Beanstalk of beans. I think that's probably, from an economics perspective, it's certainly more interesting and elegant and novel than just using the silo depositors. And then given that it doesn't seem like there's a contract that would enforce all of this happening at the moment, perhaps it is simpler to have the DAO make the loan than dozens of different wallets that are all participating in some sort of profit sharing system. Although that is something that I think Mod has mentioned in previous classes or DAO meetings, probably classes, and it's certainly an interesting idea that should get implemented on chain, and think that we should probably bifurcate that from the economics question being posed here, at least from our perspective, which is whether or not the DAO should be minting beans and lending them such that the total outstanding beans increases, but not when you factor in the liabilities of beans back to Beanstalk. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, and independent of Root, I think that this concept, there's a lot going on here.
I agree. I think this may be one of the first things to unlock, let's say, Beanstalk's potential, and what else can it do. Tyler B asks, allowing, and maybe he's touching on the same discussion here. It says allowing new beans to be minted for a loan. Is this something that we want it to be built as part of Beanstalk? We'll leave that to others to comments. My opinion, maybe. So this could be, the start of it, and we see how that goes, and what this loan is like. If Wallet asks a question, and he says the World Cup starts in 20 days, but there is no Root product on testnet. Can you maybe share a little bit of that, Manifold?
I think Silo Chad probably has an appropriate answer, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And I'll read the answer is that Root contract is on the Beanstalk repo. It has been audited, so there is work, and the expectation is that there will be something up and running, not in 20 days, but hopefully before that. Becca says
someone saying that's a non-answer. So I don't know what's a non-answer. I mean, there is no Root product on testnet. That's false. You think this idea will offer something to Beanstalk? There's a lot of competitors. I don't think that's a question. I mean, it's a personal opinion. Yes, I do think it'll offer something. I think it's very positive sum. But it looks like one of the questions is an opinion question and another is objectively false.
Guys, Al just dropped the link to the Root contract in the Beanstalk repo. It's on a branch called Beanstalk V 2.1, which contains a number of upgrades, including BIP29 and pipelines. So take a look at it there. If you need help deploying it on a local forked node, let me know and I can help you get set up with some scripts. Just for a little context here in terms of the engineering side of things, for a variety of reasons, the Beanstalk Farms team has opted to use a local forked node strategy for testing contracts. So frequently we will deploy things that aren't, they're not going to test nets in the traditional sense, in that they're not getting deployed to something like Goerli, but they are being tested extensively on local forks of mainnet, which we feel is actually a more secure and aligned way to do the sort of like testing and engineering process. So happy to explain any more about that if anybody has questions.
Thank you, Chad. And since it seems now we're talking about when is the MVP, when is this going to go live? I think the initial discussion maybe, or we may want to focus it on if Beanstalk or the DAO wants to issue that loan, if that makes sense. And again, from a risk perspective or from an economics perspective. And then the questions after that would be, all right, when are we launching and will we be ready or not? My understanding is that the Root team feels and believes that they will be ready, for this opportunity, and hence this is why they're coming and applying for that loan.
Great. I wanted to jump into and add some context from my end. So myself and some of the other engineers on the team have been working with this partner that will be launching the World Cup betting market over the past couple of weeks from a number of fronts, but just wanted to kind of add some reassurance that product efforts are moving forward. There isn't a product live on a test net that, for example, everybody here could go click and play with, but that certainly doesn't mean that there hasn't been work happening, and we've been working pretty extensively with that team to help them get online. Just to give you a sense of kind of the scope of how we've been helping. So on one front, we have a pretty sophisticated front end engineering team that has been kind of helping them get their front end stack spun up and moving really fast on getting things deployed so that people can start testing this soon. And then in addition to that, I've mentioned this in the past couple of DAO meetings, but we've been working really hard on the Beanstalk SDK, which will kind of be the first piece of software that helps teams like this integrate with Beanstalk, and sort of take advantage of a lot of the work that we've already been doing over the past 6 months to build the Beanstalk UI. So Al Bean in particular and I have been sprinting hard on that piece of software and basically getting it ready to help this team place bets using Roots, which also of course involves depositing beans and a whole number of other things. So that's in progress, and have been working very closely with them to make sure that they're ready to go.
Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, Chad. Jams had a question, and maybe he's talking about the specifics on how this betting market would work. I can read it quickly, and then maybe Manifold correct or enlighten us on how it does. So Jan says that if an individual proposes, and let's say they take a one-sided bet, and they say Italy is going to win the World Cup, other individuals would be have other bets, and then whoever wins pays the other. So he asks then if the bettors are the ones who are providing the liquidity, why does Root need liquidity? I think the answer would be is maybe if let's say we're betting on a match and one person bets that one team is going to win, but there is no other people to bet that the other team is going to win. Can you maybe explain, Manifold, how would that work, and then maybe that would answer why do we need liquidity?
Yeah, sorry, Matt. What you just distilled the question down. Can you just repeat that to me? What you said the question was?
Yeah, I think Jans is saying, is the betting market built in a way that it's basically just someone betting and the other person, taking the opposite side of the bet, and whoever wins pays the other, or?
Got it. So this is a pool style market. So this isn't like a betting exchange order book. That's something that Root is working on, but is not this specific market. This specific market is a pool, and users are swapping tokens from the pool.
So maybe to rephrase that, is that bettors will be able to bet even if there is no certain person taking the other side of the bet. I will just come in and I can.
Correct. It's just that totally exactly. But liquidity begets liquidity, and if there's insufficient liquidity, the prices won't be as good.
Yeah, and I guess this is what is you're creating the market for it. So you made your market making this betting market.
Yep.
Bacchus asks, how long?
Hey Mod, I just have sorry about this. I have a call in like 4 minutes, but I can take more questions, but I have to get off in 4 minutes.
All right, we'll take Bacchus' question, and then to others who are with us, we have 4 more minutes, and if you have other questions, drop them. And as Manifold said, we'll have time to take them, later on. How long will it take to deploy the liquidity? Can we wait a week or two and see some kind of interface or proof of concept or something?
Good question. I mean, deploying the liquidity can be pretty fast, depending on the timing of the BIP and the minting of the beans and the transfer of the beans to the multi-sig. The liquidity can be deployed as long as the markets are ready. Now, there are still a few things in audit with Halborn right now, so couldn't do that today. But I think the intention would be that the liquidity gets deployed pretty like right before the actual World Cup starts. So I think that's like around November 20th, but that's the type of timeline we're looking at. See some kind of interface or proof of concept or something. I'll circle back with the team and see what can be provided right now. Again, like there's a lot of stuff on testnet. There's some stuff that is just private right now, but we'll try to make some more things public as soon as possible if this is something that the DAO wants to consider.
Thanks, Manifold. And I would just add again is that the risk is not in Root not being able to launch that market. If the loan is given out and then again, Root doesn't launch the market or launches the market and there is no activity on the market, this is not where the risk is for the DAO. So would maybe again say let's focus the thinking on the economic side of it. Does this loan make sense? And then we can ask or go into the other questions of when will this be ready and when will it launch. And once again, the World Cup starts in November 20th. The intention is for this to be live before that. So we are short on time, especially if we want to give it. Go, Manny.
No, thanks, Maud. I'm totally with you. I just saw the word proof of concept used, and this is a real proof of concept. Like this is the proof of concept. If this happens in some capacity or some structure, like this is a proof of concept for Beanstalk. I think in more ways than anyone on this call can imagine. So food for thought.
I agree. From multiple ways as well. It's a proof of concept, maybe as market making for a betting market. It's a proof of concept for the Beanstalk DAO to issue loans. So there are a few things here that maybe it's the first of its kind, and it could open again the door for more opportunities.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you for all the amazing questions. I know I dropped a lot on today's call, and I know there's going to be infinite more questions after this. So I'll circle back with the DAO, and maybe we can open up a channel later today and continue the conversation. But this has been a lot of fun, and I hope everyone is getting excited for the World Cup markets to try out betting with Root, irrespective of this loan. And your feedback is always appreciated. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Manifold. All right, we have 10 minutes top of the hour, but I think we can extend this meeting as long as it needs. If other contributors and other, of course, members are okay with that. Do you want to go quickly through Beanstalk Farms updates? Austin, can we start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Maud. Hard to follow that up, but I'll keep it brief. So a handful of yeah, that's right, Harry Smith. So a handful of updates. Shortly after BIP 28 was proposed, Maltese caught a bug in the code, and shout out to them for continuing with the serious diligence both before the proposal and after. But they caught an issue. That issue has been a fix for that issue has been shared with Halborn, and hopefully that's something we can repropose something like today or tomorrow. In other news, I mean, sort of related to that, I'll be working on updates to the white paper for Pod Market V2. I think Aliceros is gonna be working on the updates to the Farmer's Almanac. Yeah, the number of things to sort of update and maintain every time Beanstalk gets upgraded is always increasing. And yeah, just a couple other things. The payment for that first bug bounty report went out. So it's great to see that process sort of work from end to end. We have some ideas about how to how to improve it, like how we share bug reports with Halborn and such. But it's exciting to see that process fully play out for the first time. What else? Technical docs. I guess like a first V1 of sort of some serious technical documentation is in review at the moment. Hopefully that's something we can share a first version of with the DAO in the next couple weeks. And yeah, lots of other projects in flight, but I'll leave my update to that.
Thanks, Austin. Chad, do you want to give us some updates from the engineering end?
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Nothing too much more to add besides what I described earlier, but working very hard on the SDK. One thing to note about the SDK is that the work that we're doing to help get this team over the finish line in the next week or so is also going to be very applicable to other projects that build on Beanstalk, of which there's been a number that have kind of popped up recently and will continue to be more, we hope, in the coming months. And so if you're thinking about building something on Beanstalk or just curious about sort of the capabilities that this will enable, definitely let me know. Getting some documentation out is something that we expect to do sort of with a more public launch of the SDK. Right now, it's very much focused on getting these teams over the finish line in the short term. But always happy to answer any questions about that. So please just tag me. Beyond that, the main effort that we're looking towards is the PodMarket V2 UI, which is going to include a complete refactor of the PodMarket's interface with a lot of new charting capabilities and drawing dynamic pricing functions and that sort of thing. Red Beans can talk more about the progress and the sort of reasoning behind all of that there. But just to get everybody excited, I think one of the ways we're thinking about this particular upgrade, outside of just improving the pod market as a whole, is also that we want to start thinking about what really top-notch UIs for advanced markets look like. Ultimately, Beanstalk hopes to open up many different or enable, I suppose, many different types of markets. And there's some work that can be done at the at the chain level to enable all on-chain execution of different components of markets, but in terms of actually presenting those in a clean user interface, that also poses a really unique set of challenges. So Red Beans has been working extremely hard to kind of find all the corners of that problem and come up with some solutions that we'll implement in the Beanstalk UI. But I think over time, those sorts of patterns that we develop, and perhaps even the code and the packages that we use to build those UIs out, can be a piece of collateral for the rest of the ecosystem to use. So I see a question in Barnyard Chat from Egg Salad about calls for a simplified UI. We talked a little bit about this a while back, and happy to reignite that conversation if folks feel that that's pretty important. At this time, our focus is beyond getting these components like the SDK launched, really making sure that the Beanstalk UI has a good coverage of everything that Beanstalk has to offer. And I know this has been discussed as well in chats, but things like doing multi-level transactions like rinse and sow or something like that are things that I think the farmers we already have are really excited about. Of course, over time we'd love to see simplified UIs developed to either isolated portions of what Beanstalk can do in a really clean way, or perhaps somebody will launch a entirely independent simplified UI. And we would support that project. Building the SDK and similar things will provide some of the infrastructure for others in the ecosystem to do that sort of thing. So I know that's to some degree a non-answer in that we don't really have this planned out from a Beanstalk Farms perspective. But if there's a contingent of folks who think that this is really important, I'd encourage you to or anybody to sort of wrangle that together and help me understand kind of how you're thinking about it, and just tag me and I'll give that a review, and we can talk more deeply about what that's something to do right now.
Thank you, Chad. And I believe, Sweet Red Beans, did you want to add something, or did chat cover it?
I can be brief. Chad kind of touched on this, but my focus has been mostly on getting up to date on the pod market version 2. And so this last week got some really great feedback towards the end of last week, and I've mostly been sort of fixing components and working on some of the charting micro interactions. So excited to share that. I think it's going to be interesting. It's a fun chart. It's a fun UI. But it's going to be a lot of work for the front end guys. So over the next day, the goal is hopefully to get this prototype sort of finished and handed off in the next day or two. And yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you, Sweet Red. I can give a bit on a marketing update, and then I think some folks wanted to discuss a few things, or there has been a discussion on a few channels, so we can give some time to briefly discuss it as well, or discuss it as much as we want. So two quick updates. The first is we launched a new Twitter account for Beanstalk protocol, and that's called Beanstalk Money. The reason being is that we've had instances where people were confused. They would want to reference to Beanstalk the protocol, but they would reference to it as Beanstalk Farms. And we thought that given that Beanstalk Farms is the one that's active, and the protocol doesn't really do things or say things, this is where the confusion stems from. So we will continue to use the Beanstalk Farms account as is, so nothing changes in the strategy on that end. The only difference is that now, instead of describing Beanstalk the protocol in the bio of Beanstalk Farms, the bio says that Beanstalk Farms is a decentralized development organization that's working on Beanstalk. It tags Beanstalk the protocol, and then the newly launched handle, what it does basically is it just shares every season summary, and then any bips that passes. So the way we would think about it is that what if the protocol was on Twitter? What would it post, or what would it tweet? And it would tweet the hourly updates, and then only if there has been a change to the protocol itself. So instead of really launching a new handle, what we did is that we renamed or repurposed the Beanstalk bot account, and now this stands to be the Beanstalk protocol account. I hope this is clear to others or those here, and of course we're always happy, if you have some comments or thoughts on on this thinking. Something else to quickly touch upon is Beethoven released, one of, in my opinion, my favorite song, and that came with a video. It was released yesterday. And it had, let's say, one of the highest view count for anything that we've released in a single day. The intention is that we're going to use the same idea or the same style for that video for the educational content that we're working on. So we'd expect, when that comes out, it will be more or less within the similar or the same style. The last thing that I wanted to touch upon or discuss is one of our vendors or partners, and that's the Task Group. So just to bring in everyone quickly on the same page. So Task is our PR partner, and we rely on them, or we use them when it comes to publications with traditional, let's say, media. Just to highlight something is that Task is one, or PR in general is one of the bits or one of the things that we do in marketing. So it's not the only thing that we do. But they, or for them, this is what their focus is on them. We started working with them right after the exploit. I'm going to put in, the publications. I think Bacchus asks for that. He was like, "What, where have we been with them, or where did they help us with them?" So I just dropped in the Barnyard chat the articles or the let's say the outlets that we've been with them, and then had a few comments maybe to touch on a bit. So I think some of the folks, there are two sides of the thinking. Is that one, we're overpaying and this is not the time for us to be paying what we're paying for. So what we do right now with Task is that we've agreed to them to pay around $23,000. This is the rate that we're on, where half of that is paid in beans, and they have told us or expressed that the bean exposure that they intend to have it long term. So in reality, we're like actually, let's say when it comes to like an expense or cost, we're paying half of that. We meet with Task at least once a week. So, we often meet with them more than once a week. And in no meeting that we meet with them is that there is less than 4 people or 4 resources from their end that are involved and actively working, on the Beanstalk account. I don't think that we are overpaying. They are not our first PR, let's say, partner that we work with. We paid more to others for less than what we're getting with them today, and we think that they are, or I think that they are doing a good job with what they're tasked to do. However, this doesn't mean that we will always want to use a PR, let's say, partner. Post exploit, we were in what they call in a crisis or an emergency mode. We are not on the same level, let's say, that it in, and in the future we may decide to do things differently. Where we are today, my recommendation is that we still want to go ahead with it, but we continuously reassess that, and we might come to another conclusion on it. Some other folks said that again, we're overpaying, we might get better opportunities or something that's for that. I welcome all of that to everyone as well who's in the DAO there. If you have a better opportunity, or if you find that we can do something better in that sense, please come, share it, propose it, and we will obviously take for it or take it. Because again, they're not the first people that we work with, and we've had other experiences as well with it. So we think that we are in a good place or in a good spot here. But once again, nevertheless, if you think otherwise and you have other proposals, please come and present it and share it to the DAO. I hope this answers maybe some of the concerns that some of the folks have had, but please, this is the time for you to maybe share some of your thoughts or opinions on it. I will give it a minute to see if some have comments. Otherwise, I'll go to the second topic or the next topic. So Xalad says, I think we need to put the PR agency up for pitch. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that, Xalad?
Am I coming through?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, there's just quite a number of very experienced people that I've worked with before who I think agencies who would not only kind of do PR work in the more traditional sense of kind of managing more conventional headlines, but also generating concepts and stunts and production items that could be film or other things for a fee like that. And I'm not convinced, based on my experience, that we're getting value. I think that they've obviously done a relatively solid job, and things have been very turbulent. But for what is to me by European standards quite an expensive retainer, I'm not seeing where their work is coming in.
That's fair. So what I would say again is, and just to highlight, because you said that we might get, let's say, a marketing agency for that amount. Task is purely PR, so they don't do marketing.
No, I'm talking about a PR agency, but one that doesn't just engage with just getting articles, but actually works on generating content that can generate more PR. So kind of like adding in another layer of lateral creativity, so that we're not just engaging based on sort of more B2B style headlines, but we're actually getting consumer eyeballs and stuff like this.
Sure thing. We definitely encourage something like that. So what you're saying is great. If you have a plan or already have ones to recommend, or want to try something like that, please do so. And there are multiple avenues on how we can do that. Right. It can be part of a grant. It can be directly with a BFC, and lastly, it can be a direct proposal to the DAO. So I would encourage you, of course, to if you think you can do something like that can be net positive and better, of course, than what we're doing. Please do so and present it.
Cool.
All right. I think maybe my next topic, Exad, what I have you was to talk and chat with you, because I understand you wanted to, contribute maybe to the DAO, but you said that it might, maybe you were having a bit of a challenge on how to present that. And me and you just briefly spoke.
I mean, call me old school. Yeah, just as by way of introduction, I mean, call me old school. I've been in touch with lots of the team. Obviously, I've consulted on crypto projects before, but never been kind of part of a DAO. And obviously, everybody's been massively up against it this last 8 months, or no, 7-8 months. But yes, I'm kind of a near 2-decade experienced creative director and strategy director who's worked in a lot for some of the world's biggest creative companies, and I've had experience both managing my own business, founding fintech companies, being head of brand of fintech companies, and managing big brand strategy pieces. And I also have a huge interest in alternative economical models and alternative political systems, and so Beanstalk is kind of perfect. It's a sweet spot. A friend got me interested in it, and then I set about learning. Despite nearly failing a degree in economics, I had quite an uphill struggle to get my head around it, but finally did. And I think there's a lot of potential here. And I think right now, I can commend the team for basically having a very solid base to work from. But I think now we're back up and running, and the site's so good, and we've now got a kind of a bigger team, which seems to be kind of quite well oiled. I think the opportunity is really to get together a proper creative brand strategy, which is this, as I indicated in kind of my document and some chats we've had, something that actually leads to very, very progressive and radical messaging, video content, editorial coming out of Beanstalk that, again, doesn't just report on certain happenings around the farm, but really tries to lead the conversation about what a new money can be, how Bean kind of plays into especially the economic circumstances I think most people are facing, which is a huge cost of living crisis, quite dramatic changes in inflation and interest rates. But basically, like, I'm massively inspired by the brains, the intellects, and the effort of the people here, and I think we could do a better job, the kind of stage 2 job in communicating that to the general public, because I want to see a lot more growth. I think there's a lot more potential for some really serious growth again, that won't just have to happen organically. That if we're in a position to mint beans and do these kinds of things, then we're in the rare position of being able to sort of fund our own startup in a way, and really make some radical and differentiated decisions. So that's my pitch, basically.
Thank you, Exad. And you earlier dropped, let's say, a small maybe presentation. So I just referenced to it in the town hall, or sorry, the Barnyard chat. So yeah, so this is sorry, I was reading Guy's comment. So this is an introduction, let's say, to the DAO. So maybe members understand a bit of more of what you want to do, Exad. I'm happy to take this conversation or to discuss it later. My only take, I guess, would be is depending on how or how Beanstalk Farms right now functions. So there is no direct way of someone to come and say, hey, I want you to do 1, 2, 3 and do them, and that will be judged on it. The way that we are today is that you will come and be like, hey, I want to do 1, 2, 3, and be like, okay, go ahead and do it. So if you, and I believe it seems that you have some sort of a plan in that way, that I think we can do 1, 2, 3 better, or we can do 4, 5, 6 in that way. Present it, say that this is what I want to do. I'm sure that you will have my support. You will have the support from the BFC. You will have the support from the community in sorts of a grant, or you can have also the support of the DAO itself, and just like applying for a proposal itself. So I'm happy to have this conversation later. I see that you've shared your experience. And then you might have some ideas on what you want to do. Maybe we can tie it a bit, more just details and understanding exactly what, and it could be things that are already being done. So you can say, hey, I want to take the social media channels and I do, such and such with them. Or that, hey, I want to manage maybe tasks, because I can know what to do with PR with them, or I want to onboard another PR agency or so on. So maybe just not quantify, detail out what you have in mind and what you want to do, and I'm pretty sure that you'll have the support, from me, and the rest of the team, and finally the whole DAO. Is that good, Exceled?
Yeah, I do hear you. I think I must have not communicated myself properly, because I think there is one fundamental task that needs doing that I have seen no evidence for, which is, I think there's an awful lot of information, wisdom in people's heads right now around the farm, and particularly in some of the more founding members. And my intention is, I think what's happened is that we've built a very interesting and progressive product, but what's happened is if we're looking for more growth, that it has to be something that has more appeal and accessibility to the mass market. And so when I talk about my main goal being developing a brand strategy, that's the A that I would start by doing, and would propose to take, part-time, something like 4 months to do that, where I would interview stakeholders, I'd interview people in the community, I'd set up a channel to jam this out with anybody else who wanted to contribute. And then what we would do is we would actually have a sort of more of a Silicon Valley level type of kind of 5-year strategy for what we are going to become, how we're going to become it, and how the language that we use, how the partners that we use, how that fits in with business to business partnerships, because obviously there's a huge way in which integrating Bean into other things is very key. What do the pitch documents for that look like? What's the vision that we're selling? So really, it's like a head of brand role. This is the thing, or it's a head of communication strategy role. It's something that would entail an awful lot of deliverables that we'd probably find out more and more every week that we were working together. But I think this is where you say, well, we can talk, or you can have a grant, or you can be this, or you can do that.
Can I ask a question, Egg Salad? Because I think this is amazing. My question for you is, do you think that this makes sense to do within Beanstalk Farms, or do you think this makes sense to do as a separate organization that you can found, that is ultimately going to have a website and put out all these materials and resources that may, be symbiotic to Beanstalk Farms? But from a structuring perspective, we have a blank slate. We can do whatever we want. So if it's up to you, you seem motivated, you seem like you know what needs to get done, you seem like you've got ideas and want to go do them. Like, how can we all collectively best enable you to go do what you want to do?
I need to keep the lights on, and I actually don't know. I will confess my ignorance. Like, I know I'm a kind of a classical hyper-focused autist. I know how to do what I do very well, and then certain blind spots. The actual frameworks for how this gets done and some of the organizational part of the DAO I found it difficult to get my head around. I would say that it would probably be, on the surface of the two options you just said, it would probably be more focused for me to just be a member of what I think is Beanstalk Farms, or be working or freelancing for Beanstalk Farms, because otherwise, then the other opportunity would be that I could become, with anyone else in the community who wanted to be involved, I could become a kind of a DeFi branding agency that was paid in beans, that we could do, help people's other projects out. But I would say that would probably be like a year 2, year 3 idea. And what we really need to do is build like a massive case study for that with Bean, and then go, all right, well, this team of experts is available for hire and you can pay us in beans. And there's then some type of margin or cut that feeds into Bean liquidity. I'm a very good branding guy and a kind of a shitty businessman, if I can confess to you. So,
well, we can't all be good at everything, So
exactly.
So thinking out loud here, I'm curious for what members of the BFC think and other members of the DAO think. But from our perspective, maybe it makes the most sense for you. Let's review what are the different things that you have available to you? Maybe, I don't know if Guy is around, but maybe Guy has a more comprehensive understanding than we do at this point. But if you want to chime in and just start describing all the different ways, otherwise we're happy to. I'll pause for maybe a sec just to give you a chance. Go ahead.
Sure. I was responding to a couple of Breen's questions, so I wasn't fully tuned in, but the question is just like, what are the different ways to contribute to Beanstalk in some capacity? Whether it's
like
dog farms or
from
something else.
from top, there's like 10 different ways that this can be constructed. So before maybe we talk about what's the way for Exile to do what he wants, it would be just constructive to kind of lay out what are the different options and resources.
Yeah, sure. So if the question is like how to get paid primarily, or how to get paid to work on Beanstalk, I guess there's primarily three. So each of the current Beanstalk Farms committee members has discretion over the budget, and hiring other contributors proposing to be on the Beanstalk Farms committee is permissionless, and that would just be a proposal to the DAO to have say over, who can be hired, how the budget is used, things like that. So that would be one option. The other, it sounds like your focus is mostly marketing. So if the goal is to be hired by the Beanstalk Farms committee, I think, a discussion with Mod would probably be an appropriate first step. In which case, 3 people on the committee would have to vote to hire a given contributor. Otherwise, the process for like one-off grants or contract work, whatever we want to call it exactly, isn't super formal, but as mentioned, the BFC has discretion over the budget. So there've been a handful of cases where folks from the community or other people have been I guess quote unquote contracted out to work on specific scoped projects for some number of beans. So those would be like the main 3 options. I suppose another one would be, I'm not sure the total complete scope of what you're interested in working on, but a grant from Bean Sprout is something that has also been done in the past for specific projects, although that's mostly starting like new projects or initiatives on top of Beanstalk. So hopefully that summary helps a little bit. And happy to answer any questions.
Or you could propose a bit, even. Mint, egg, salad, bean.
I need more stalk for that, but I thank you for the summary. Thank you for the summary of options. I think, to be honest, what I would ask is I do feel a little bit bounced around, and I think obviously because this hasn't been a priority quite so fervently as developing, it's probably worthwhile that some of the core members get together and decide what's best for Bean, because I'm actually, as much of a as difficult as I sound like in some of the forums, I'm actually very accepting of different circumstances and can work with you. So I actually don't know. I don't know what's the best way. It doesn't sound like at the end of the day there's going to be a great deal of difference. So I can flex.
Yeah, I can maybe touch. Go ahead, Caesar, if you wanted to share something.
I can speak a little bit on the general ideas of like how DAOs and DeFi works and Web3 and stuff like that. Into a lot of DAOs, I say a lot of things, and generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of like, oh, I want to have this job, and then we will decide to respond as the job progresses, or we will start to build initiatives and stuff like that. Generally speaking, when DAOs, when they decide to do things, because it's all token holder voting, then these token holders want to see actual responsibility. So the best thing that I found is that if you want to get paid from a job, there's 2 possibilities. You design an entire proposal and you say like, oh, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to build this thing that does this, and it's going to cost probably about this much money, and that can be a range. It can be an adjustment, right? Or whatever it is that you plan on doing. Or the other opportunity is you just build those things and then say like, look, I've done this. Now, please, recuperate me some of my losses. Now, it's very untraditional. Like, it's not something you can depend on. It's a 9-to-5 like salary type job. But this is kind of the way most of DAOs are working. And this is how I found to be the most successful if you want to try to get paid by DAOs and so forth.
Thank you, Caesar, and I would like echo what Caesar said. Is again where we are right now, or at least how we're looking at let's say in Beanstalk Farms, maybe not all of Beanstalk Farms, but specifically with the marketing, is that we don't have, or I don't have some sort of a, like, hey, I want you to do 1, 2, 3, and I'm like managing, you to see if you're doing the 3. It's more of that, I have a plan to do this, and we can facilitate or help you with the tools and the things that you need to be done, but we want you to go and do it. So if you present a plan and if you have an idea, and it could be across anything that we think is positive, come and do it. But if the question is, or I want a job and I want you to tell me what to do, this is where we're not in the position.
No.
To
So this is where the discussion becomes slightly circular, because I think now at this point, I think most people in this conversation have probably heard me say the same thing twice, and I'm not talking about you tell me what I do, but you tell me
yes.
how I can get
think,
paid.
yeah.
And I think, and so hang on, obviously. There's a way in which different tech products can be built ahead of time and delivered. This is a thing that needs, in my view, there's an intellectual task that needs doing. That is essentially the way I often talk about what it is that I do, is that there is a level of contemplation that doesn't happen a lot of the time in very fast-moving organizations. That is essentially what strategy is. Okay, so strategy being different from completing different objectives every week, being very, very, very different from how we develop software, how we develop the strategic framework for a business, and the language around that is something that I can understand, certainly, to maybe people who are much more used to sitting in front of a code base, looks sort of wishy-washy or looks uncertain. But what I am fundamentally saying is, I will be the head of brand communications, or the head of brand strategy for a period of time.
That sounds to me, sorry to interject, like you should propose to the DAO to be on the BFC.
Okay.
Or if not, if you don't want to work with Beanstalk Farms directly, but it seems like you do, and it seems like you're, doesn't seem like any reason not to, you could also propose to the DAO a BIP to mint beans to fund your own organization. Or you could propose to Beansprout a grant for beans to fund your own organization. So, I think the last question you need to ask yourself is whether or not you want to work through Beanstalk Farms or not. And if so, just write up a proposal to the DAO. This is why we need a head of brand, and just do it. The whole thing, and I think it's been so constructive to run through all of this, but the whole system has been designed, at least as we understand it, to make exactly what's happening right now possible, such that you want to go do something, go do it. What's the best way? You're saying other people are getting in your way, you just want to do it yourself. Boom. There's a lot of different ways for you to go do that. So,
for me, very much. To me, the clear answer seems to be the fact that I am also, this is not, I think one of the jobs that what I'm talking about is someone who brings a sort of a strategic, linguistic, philosophical cohesion to the team as well. So it would be very much a question of working within Beanstalk Farms. So the fact is, you tell me where I make that proposition. Do I write a keynote and post it in general? I obviously, I could do a bit. It just seems like if I don't have to get 1% of Stalk together to accomplish the same proposal, I won't.
First off, it's 0.1%. I don't think it's 1%.
0.1. Sorry.
But I think Guy can, Guy is very familiar with all those processes, and I bet you guys can figure out how to best propose that to the DAO in a timely fashion.
Cool. All right. Thanks for everyone's time.
This is great. Thank you, Egg Salad.
Thank you, Egg Salad, and I hope we addressed or touched upon some of the things that you wanted to discuss. And happy again to take this later with me, or maybe with other members that you see are fit for it. Okay. Do we have any concerns or comments from other members? Bagas, I see you're in you're with us here, and I think you had some concerns maybe earlier. Did this cover your questions, or do you have other comments or thoughts? Okay. All right. Maybe we can give it a minute, see if others have other things to discuss, and whether it's marketing related or to anything that we've discussed earlier in today's call, or something that we haven't discussed. So let's give it a minute and see if folks have some thoughts to share.
I have a question about converting. The other day I was just fidgeting around and I saw that the bean was above peg. So I just tried to convert my siloed beans into 3 CRV, and the transaction just failed. So I'm wondering if it was because the delta wasn't high enough, but like when it's below peg, it literally tells you cannot convert now, right? So it actually allowed me to send the transaction, but then it failed. So I'm wondering, I didn't want to keep sending it because I didn't want to waste gas. So I'm wondering if anybody knows or if there's something I'm missing there.
Maybe others can give you some more details, but my understanding, Caesar, is that there is a bot that tries to sandwich convert transactions. So one way to maybe overcome that is to use a flash bot. Brian shared a few links, and maybe he can tell you more about that on how to bypass the bot that causes failed transactions. And just to make sure, this was your question, right? On the failed converts.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I just use like Flashbot RPC and give it a try again. I did it one time, it failed, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to keep trying this, right? So
sounds like a good strategy. And that's not to keep trying when it failed. Okay, anything else?
Yo. Hey guys.
Hey,
how y'all doing?
Doing all right. How's everything with you?
Great. So I have something to share. It's kind of my side project I've been working on for the past week. I've been interested in the liquidity bonds, right? From Liquidity, the chicken bonds. And if you haven't looked at the white paper, I think you should look at it. It's pretty cool stuff. But looking at their protocol, and just for context, it's cool that Liquidity is a immutable protocol, and because of that, you can't really develop on it. So it's really props to the Liquidity team to develop something on top of Liquidity, and still retain that immutability. But essentially, what happens is that they have this new token called Boosted LUSD, and that gives enhanced leverage yield, right? And they do this by imposing an opportunity cost by when you get the token. So looking at them, it's based on the fact that the liquidity pool or the liquidity protocol has an organic yield source, which is the stability pool. And me thinking, the Beanstalk also has an organic yield source with the Bean seniorage, right? So I've been working on this bad boy right here. I'm calling it the Beanstalk Coop because chicken coop, but essentially it's chicken bonds generalized for Beanstalk. I'm not done yet. I just started. I got shit to do, but because Beanstalk is on a diamond standard, it's much easier to add composability. So, for example, Liquidity has to use external protocols like B protocol and Uran's convex vault in order to sell the yield back to LUSD. Beanstalk's yield is not only organic, but it's also in Bean. So a lot of logic there is simplified there. They also have the AMOs, which allows people to convert LP to Bean, or LP to LUSD, and LUSD to LP, based on the price. And that seems pretty familiar, right? That's our convert function. So I was like, okay, let's just do this, YOLO. So this is not done yet. I still got a lot of stuff to do. I would like to make this a Beansprout thing because I would like to focus on building stuff on Beanstalk itself. But it was definitely a starting point. Some other things to consider is that I needed a front end for this. And there's not gonna be an audit, it's kind of gonna be YOLO. Not sure we can do with it, but I just leave it out to the open. I'm gonna post a Beanstalk idea. Post on the Beanstalk idea here.
We could probably try to get it audited through Outboard when it's done, right?
Let's
When do you
go.
get it?
That's hype. Okay. But yeah,
I know
that'll
that
be a
there's
myth.
been some. Sorry to interject. I know there's been some process on like permissionless access to Halborn, and there's a question around funding, all that stuff, and yada yada. But we can try to use this maybe as a proof of concept to figure that out.
Thank you guys. That'd be awesome. But yeah, so like it's really cool. A lot of logic can be simplified significantly. I've talked with the Liquidity team. They think it's dope too. They would like some, I guess, core members of the Beanstalk team, whatever that really means, to talk with them. Ideally, I don't want to like kind of copy this and then just make this not useful to Liquidity. So I would like to like convert, or whenever we enable the wells with stable swap formula, I would like to like use the permanent liquidity here to fund the Bean LUSD pool rather than the Bean 3 curve. But that's all conversation for the future. But yeah, what do y'all think? Can someone help, please?
I think this is very exciting, Brian. Definitely worth. I mean, Manifold unfortunately left the call, but definitely worth a discussion with Beansprout.
Oh yeah, so yeah, also than that, yes, sweet red beans, please. I need help, UI help. It was just me output HTML with Times New Roman text, and I know you guys don't like that, so. And also we need Liquidity Chicken Bonds also has on-chain dynamic NFTs, which is really cool, right? And I would like to do that too with Beanstalk related stuff. But yeah, I personally find it cool because not only essentially like TLDR and chicken bonds, I recommend reading the white paper because it's kind of a doozy. But over time, because of like market dynamics, it accrues this permanent pool, and then that's how it kind of perpetuates enhanced yield. Not only do we compound the yield from beans, but we also compound the yield from stock. So it becomes this entity, this protocol. It's an entity that kind of keeps growing and yield itself. So pretty cool stuff in my opinion.
It is cool, and what's cooler is seeing individuals building and taking the initiative and doing what you're exactly doing. Publius, did you want to say something? I feel like I cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say it might even be cool as a wrapper for root token or tokens.
Yes. So currently, at its current implementation, subject to change, please. If you guys have any ideas, let me know. But right now, when you deposit the token, you gain you keep your principal if you chicken out, which means you like forfeit your yield, but you keep your grown stock as well. So the only thing you lose is the opportunity cost with earned beans. And there's a lot of economics you think from this, right? Let's say Beanstalk's under peg for a long period of time, so there's no yield, right? So then you can deposit your bean into this Coop protocol. You won't lose anything if you think it's going to be under peg for a significant amount of time, and then get your boosted yield tokens for essentially zero opportunity cost. Or let's say you don't even want to mint these boosted bean tokens. Let's say you want to speculate on the demand of the future yield of bean. It's kind of like leverage yield, leverage speculation. Let's say you think the yield's going to go up, you just buy the boosted bean tokens. Let's say you want to go down, you just you sell it or whatever. A lot of cool stuff, I feel.
All right, excellent stuff.
The intent? I have no intent. I just thought it was cool. I just want to see. I thought this was cool. I thought Beanstalk. This seems not relatively simple. That sounds like an understatement, but it seems possible to build this on Beanstalk. I wanted to see how easy it is to build on top of Beanstalk, and here we are. The intent can come later, I guess, but ideally, it would have a Bean LUSD somewhere.
Can I jump in here and ask a couple questions? I kind of like this idea. I'm quite familiar with the chicken bonds as well, like in the sense that I've done my research, I've done a video, and that's about it, right? So are you suggesting that people will then take their beans, put it into the coop? The coop will then silo it, compound, like harvest the seeds and the sprouts all the time, and then just keep compounding those in, so then people don't have to compound that. Now, when they use their beans to enter the coop, then they're gonna get a bond, and that bond sits with them. And if they decide at any times, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, they can sell the bond, like chicken out, right? Chicken out of the bond, get back their beans, right? And the whatchamacallit, the seeds and the sprouts that they should have been having at that time, right? But they give up those yield that you had compounded for them in that vault. Or after some time they chicken in and you give them like the wrapped boosted beans token. But this is the part that I don't quite understand. Like, what is this boosted beans token? Is just going to be selling on an LP, just in an LP, like it's not an act, like, is it, you know what I mean? This is the part that I'm missing a little bit, because I understand how the boosted liquidity works, and it's not LUSD anymore. It's it's a wrapped kind of LUSD that's in a pool with LUSD. So it kind of stays on peg in that sense. Well, it's never supposed to be pegged, like, because it's interest bearing. But
that's why
trading.
I suggested it might make sense to wrap root tokens, which has its own zero fee way of generating some yield, and so you end up of additional yield generation on top of the silo yield.
So for the first question, how LUSD does it? They have a B LUSD paired with LUSD3 curve on the curve, right? And so that's how you get liquidity there. I'm not sure. Is that what you're asking? And they get that, and they incentivize that because of a chicken in fee. So there is liquidity there.
Yeah. So it's like that's it. Like the boosted bean or the boosted LUSD, it's not actually LUSD anymore. It's a completely different token. It just happens to be with that, and its yield comes from the LUSD or the bean. So this is kind of part where I like, how would this boosted bean fit back into the silo or into the Beanstalk system by itself? It would kind of be a separate entity in that sense. Like, it would be like another token, right?
Well, yeah, that's the point, actually, to build stuff on top of Beanstalk. That's why, this should be this is why I kind of ran into the Bean Sprout, because Bean Sprout is development on top of Beanstalk, whereas Beanstalk Farm is development of Beanstalk itself. So yeah, this should be a token that's external to Beanstalk Farms or Beanstalk the protocol. It shouldn't be developed by Beanstalk Farms at all. So, like, I mean, there is an option to, like, let's say we do include it in silo. Not sure, haven't thought about that too much. I feel like there's some circularity there. I haven't thought about too much, but the sky's the limit.
I personally like the idea for the most part. I'd have to really dig deeper into it, but it's not really. I don't have a ton of voting power, but I do have some. But I like the idea, and anywhere that, in my opinion, anywhere that would like be able to give beans a use case, like where people can be like, oh, if I buy beans, then I can do this, or if I earn beans, then I can do that. Then all of these kind of aspects are what I think is the most important thing for any kind of stablecoin protocol, is to make a use for that stablecoin to be used somewhere, like whether it's spent or something, right?
For sure. Just a note, there's nothing to be voted for, I don't think. Like, yes, there's nothing to be voted for, really. Like, whether or not, let's say the DAO hates this idea. Like, I can still build it, It's just the point of being permissionless. I don't think, there's not much. I mean, I guess if Beansprout wanted to fund it, I'm not going to ask for funding. This is more of a side passion project, If, like, we want developers, if Beansprouts wants developers, then yeah, they could do that. If they don't, they don't. We just gets developed slower, But obviously my priority is developing on the farm itself rather than on top of the farm. So, let's say 20% of my time is devoted for this Coop idea, just a little bit slower. But yeah, I get you. We definitely want more use cases on the farm.
Thank you, Brian. And once again, this is very cool and very inspiring. Syncubate. I know we're now almost 2 hours in this meeting, but I think you wanted to share some stuff from your end on your proposal or your idea.
Hey, thanks, Mod. Yeah, do you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Great. Yeah, I don't want to take too much time. I already gave the presentation a few weeks back. So if you want to listen to that DAO call, I think it was 2 Thursdays ago. But under the Beanstalk Ideas channel, I posted an idea several weeks back about revisiting the April exploit. So, just full circle coming with an update to the DAO for that. I collaborated with the team over at Hats Finance. They kind of run a decentralized bug bounty platform similar to ImmuneFi and others. And Hats Finance team and I worked on a draft BIP. We shared that with the community a few days back, and Mod reached out to me earlier today and invited the Hats Finance team to come on one of the subsequent DAO calls. So I'm going to try to see if they can come on for maybe next week's call, hopefully, if not shortly thereafter at the latest, and give you guys an update and a more maybe technical explanation of the proposal and what it would entail, and some of the various moving parts and potential next steps. So that's all I really have.
Thank you, Sync. And I think maybe from your ideas, and maybe Guy can help us in this a bit, is what are the next steps, as you said. If you think that maybe the Hats team coming in here would explain it a bit more to the DAO. If you think it's clear to the DAO, what the proposal is, and you would like to proceed, with it to see, for folks or farmers can start voting on it, then let us know or let Guy know, and I'm sure they can help you with moving this proposal forward.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mod. Yeah, it's just a question of there's 2 proposed work streams in the BIP, if you guys get a chance to look at it. And the overarching question, I think, for me and the Hats team, as far as next step, would be whether the community, if they're supportive of moving forward with this in some manner, whether it would be preferable to simply focus on the first work stream, or tackling this with the 2 proposed work streams together. So that's a question for the community, and I think having the Hats Finance team present what their vault programs offer would provide potentially more clarity on the proposed second work stream before a final decision is made. So yeah, I'll definitely take you up on that. Hopefully the Hats team can come on next week's call.
Sounds good. And maybe just one last thing to add, to comment on this topic, and maybe just like a reminder for all, Beanstalk Farms is not the community and is not the DAO. So there was a comment when I said that Beanstalk Farms, this proposal is for the DAO and it's not for Beanstalk Farms, and the intention there is that it is not that Beanstalk Farms decides what the community thinks or wants. Beanstalk Farms goes through the same effort, let's say, that other or anyone who wants to propose a proposal to the DAO, where you go through it again, and then in the end the stockholders that vote. Nevertheless, Beanstalk Farms is part of the DAO. So it is, let's say, would be expected, or it makes sense for community members to seek Beanstalk Farms' help in moving, let's say, proposals forward, or to help them facilitate, the discussion around that proposals. But the point that I want to make is that it is not Beanstalk Farms' decision or way to signal, let's say, where a proposal. Maybe Beanstalk Farms can come together and say that, hey, we as a team think 1, 2, 3. But it is not, again, their decision or their thinking on where, how the community should vote, or what is the outcome of that vote. Other members are here; they can shed maybe some more information or share their opinion and thoughts on that. Publius, you're also here. You can also, let maybe the community think on how to present, and maybe should they be discouraged if Beanstalk Farms is not interested in a proposal. If the Beanstalk Farms team thinks some way about a proposal, should that make community members think in one way or another? or discourage them or encourage them, to submit proposals or not?
I mean, it seemed like a little bit of a rhetorical question, Mod, to be frank. But if you're asking us the answer is obviously no. People should not be discouraged. So if anything, was thinking while Sync was talking that the facilitation of the BIP, as Mod said, reach out to Guy and you guys can propose the BIP. That's really how Beanstalk Farms should work from our perspective, where anyone that wants to do something, if there's a little bit of grease that is needed because there's a lack of technical knowledge or a lack of understanding about procedure, Beanstalk Farms is an open resource to help facilitate that. That's very different than, as you're suggesting, Mod, that when people reach out to Beanstalk or reach out to the community, that Beanstalk Farms has an obligation or should be making judgment or passing judgment on everyone that comes to the community. In fact, there's a very good argument to be made that that's not really the role of Beanstalk Farms per se, and that it's better not to wield such a wide brush with when to welcome people, when not to welcome. Everyone's welcome. Beanstalk Farms is designed to help anyone that wants help building stuff around Beanstalk. And if Beanstalk Farms can't help, then Bean Sprout is designed to make sure that you have resources that you can go create whatever you need. So this is something that's come up a couple of times in this DAO meeting in particular, and feel like it's very constructive to talk about it more and more, particularly as there seems to be lots of different ideas floating around and people wanting to do things and build things, which is insane and fucking amazing, and just totally we should all be thrilled and encouraged by it. And in short, if there's still a lack of resources and structure such that people can't do things that they want or propose things that they want in a permissionless manner, people should raise their hands and highlight that there's a problem in our collective procedures, because everything is really designed to be as open and decentralized as possible. So to your point, Mod, no, there was a little bit of tension, perhaps raised, or friction. I don't know what you want to call it, but there was certainly a candid discussion had about what's an appropriate way to receive third parties in this instance. And hopefully it's very clear that everything is open, but that Beanstalk Farms is really designed to be grease, and if anything, neutral grease, not necessarily grease with an agenda. So hopefully that's constructive.
Thank you, Publius, and I think that is clear.
So I would just add on the BIP proposal process, just for everyone's awareness. I think what was approved via governance is that after a Discord channel is open for discussion, that a BIP would need to be proposed within 2 weeks, I believe, are the current parameters. And just had a chance to skim the channel. It seems like there is like an implementation associated or required for the BIP. So I mean, I think probably maybe it makes sense to wait until that's a little bit more further developed and socialize the proposal and implementation with the community. But to Publius's point, it's really meant to be as permissionless as possible. And if someone really wants to say like, hey, I really want to open this BIP discussion channel today, we'll do that. Unfortunately, it requires a Discord moderator at the moment, but hopefully over time we can come up with more permissionless processes for things like that. And then just on a personal level, I still, haven't had a chance to really read it in full, but I was hoping to set aside like an hour or so to read all the posts in the forum channel and the BIP as well, and provide some thoughts. So hopefully that provides some clarity on what the process actually looks like. but always happy to answer questions. And if any of that's unclear or you find it's undocumented, definitely want to fix that. So let me know.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. And I think when you get a chance to look at the thread, you'll maybe have better clarity about my interest in BF's, scrutiny of the proposal specific to the last question or post I made in that thread pertaining to the proposal and some lingering questions I had that are perhaps best addressed by BF if this were to proceed in some manner.
Thank you, Sync, and thank you, Guy, for taking us through the way to propose. Okay, I think we're almost 2 hours in now. I'll give it a minute maybe to see if there's anything else to be noted or discussed before ending this call.
One thing to just maybe point out is that Depot and Pipeline V2 are under audit, but it seems like the audit is going to take sufficient time, and obviously we don't want to rush anyone such that there won't be time to propose Pipeline and Depot as a BIP prior to the World Cup stuff starting as it's planned. And in short, Pipeline and Depot will facilitate all the betting to happen and lots of other stuff because it's so generalized to happen in a single transaction, which we think is really cool and exciting. And if people are going to be using Beanstalk tech, we'd love for their first interaction with it to be a seamless user experience. The hope is that if the audit is done in time to deploy Pipeline and Depot as a separate contract first, and then at some point shortly thereafter also propose it as a BIP to Beanstalk to incorporate it directly into the Beanstalk Diamond. But just wanted to kind of shout out that that's perhaps a little bit of a different precedent prior to most of the previous upgrades to Beanstalk or the Beanstalk ecosystem, and just kind of raising awareness that that's well underway.
Thank you for the update, Publius. I guess we can take the last question by Guy, and he asks, how would those contracts be governed prior to be added to Beanstalk?
So there's no requirement for governance, and in short, because it's just a permissionless contract that you'd use and doesn't hold any value, that contract could be deployed once, and then when a new version exists, it could just be deployed as an upgraded version. There's no need to upgrade Pipeline and Depot itself. You can just deploy a new version of it. So hopefully that answers why there's no need for governance for these contracts. So they'll likely be immutable.
Okay, I think this answers the question.
Yes, thanks.
Right. Okay, thank you, everyone for joining us today, those who are still with us and those who aren't. With that, thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you in next week's DAO meeting. Otherwise, I believe a big chunk of this discussion was Root's proposal. So I believe that they will post maybe or open a channel to continue that discussion there. And if we see deemingly fit that maybe it requires another meeting of that sort, it could happen, or it may take place. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week.